Hi, Michael Fox, and this is the Prospector Podcast, and we are on location at the 50th anniversary of the New Orleans Investment Conference. It's the golden anniversary of the world's oldest gold show, and all that glitters isn't necessarily gold, and I've found the silver guru wandering around. David Morgan has joined me. Welcome, David.
Thanks for having me, Mike. It's good to be here.
It's good to see you in person. It's been a while, and let's talk about the silver market. It has taken off dramatically this year, and it's finally looks like it's catching up to the moves that gold had earlier.
Yeah, this year it's actually outperformed slightly to gold. Gold's done wonderfully this year. We're up, from roughly 2,000 to 2,800. We backed off to, I think, 2,550 when we're coming back up right now. I think we're building a trading range. And silver's, caught gold percentage-wise and exceeded slightly. And it's good to see silver move. I'm still slightly disappointed based on the gold-silver ratio. For me, I like to see the gold-silver ratio below 70 to confirm gold's move. And we're still in the 80s. So even though it's done well, I'm still looking for better performance out of silver.
Yeah, I've been bullish myself on silver. I think silver has, as a percentage, has a longer runway than gold has towards their highs. My thought on it is that if the high mark for gold previous to this last move was around 2,000, for rounding, and if it's heading to that 3,000, 3,200 range, as some people are projecting, the silver, it topped at around $50. So if I take the same percentage, it looks like a silver price that comes up at around $85. So as a percentage, silver still has a nearly two-bagger available to it. Is that a good logic to look at, or is it flawed?
I don't think it's flawed. I think if you look at what silver's done since it's been demonetized, you see silver at the end in the last gas move, parabolic move. It's always outperformed gold. I expect it'll do that. And what factor do you use? I mean, let's go back to recent history, because recent history is more important than what it did 100 or 200 years ago. So if we go back to the financial crisis, you saw silver at 21, and then the crisis hit, it went to 9. From 9, it went from 9 to 48. So it went up sixfold. Gold went up about 300%. So it actually outperformed gold during the what everyone calls, and rightfully so, the financial crisis. So that's the biggest move we've had in real terms globally in recent times. So based on that and what you said, I think it is logical. You'll see, I think gold will do well. I think silver will do at least a double. So if you get $1,000 invested in gold, doubles, it would be fourfold in silver. No guarantee, of course. I think you should own them both, but I do expect it to outperform.
So by your model, then you said fourfold. If silver right now is trading in the $30 range approximately, so your model would suggest even greater, than my conservative model of 85. You're up 4 times. That's 120.
Yeah, I've said we'd hit $100 silver back in 2003. We're probably around the $6 level at that time. So, my next on the line may be chopped off. I doubt it. But I do think we'll see triple-digit silver before this last secular move is over. And I don't think we have a lot of time left, meaning I think we'll probably peak out in 2026 or so. Could be wrong. Could be longer. We'll have to see.
Okay, so this is going to be a quick and violent move upwards.
The last move in any market is the parabolic move. It's the greatest move in percentage terms in the least amount of times. I mean, many people have heard me say almost ad infinitum, 90% of the move comes in the last 10% of the time. If you look at the 1980s bull market, you saw silver go from the monetary standard of $1.30 an ounce in 1964 all the way to $50 in 1980 January. But if you look at January 1979, silver's at $6. So in 1 year's time, it went up 850%. I did the math on that. 90% of the move came in the last 10% of the time. It actually was about 87% of the move came in the last 7% of the time. So once you see these markets move. Now, that doesn't guarantee it will do that the next time, but the point is valid, that at the last move, we get this big, huge FOMO, fear of missing out. And people will move out of real estate, move out of stocks, move out of bonds, move out of everything and move into the precious metals. And last time that happened in the 1980 move, it was US only, pretty much. And Saudis were in there somewhat. But this time it'll be gold. I mean, everyone on the internet knows how to buy gold or silver somewhere. And so I think that the amount of demand that potentially exists moving out of whatever currency de jure you have, be it, rubles, be it pesos, euros, Canadian dollars, what have you, are going to be moving into the precious metals. So I expect this next move to look similar to what happened in 1980, but maybe even more percentage-wise.
So the answer is it's just history then for all those people are saying, how come the silver stocks and the silver hasn't moved the same way as the gold stocks? It's just a matter of being patient and waiting.
Should be. It should be. As much as I work to know and believe, that's what should happen. I mean, absolutely no guarantees, but I don't back off either. I really do believe that's exactly or very close to what will happen. I've said on earlier interviews, 5-6 years ago, that the move that we'll see in the future will make the history books. It'll be beyond anything we've probably seen in the past.
Yeah, it's I find it remarkable that patience is what's required, and a lot of the people I talk with in the silver market don't have a whole lot of it.
Well, I think I would argue that slightly, Mike, just that I think they've given a lot of patience and they've given enough. I've waited this year, I got a letter from one of our members and he said, I've been in this sector with you for 10 years and I'm at a break even right now. I don't have a lot left. I can't wait another 10 years. What am I going to do? And, I can emphasize that. So I think the patience is people have it, but it's been worn out. And what's interesting is we're not seeing a lot of interest in the newsletter industry. And I say that with some confidence because I've talked to almost everybody in the industry and I know most of them, not everyone, just about. And almost everybody's just kind of trading water, which is something I wouldn't expect with gold, with the move we've seen with gold going 2,000, 2,800. But stocks just really haven't really confirmed that move. Some of these stocks are doing well. Two of our picks in the top tier are actually making new highs, which you expect with gold making new highs. You expect the underlying stocks to be doing the same thing. But most of them are lagging.
Yeah, no, they are. Comparatively, the majors are starting to make some moves, but it's nowhere near where the price of gold is. I try and remain confident at some point in time the market will take a pivot into the precious metals because they'll look at the profitability of these companies and realize that they're trading in cents on the dollar compared to profit. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge, and it's it's frustrating for everybody. But patience is a virtue, as we say in this. Going forward, we've just had an election in the United States. We have a change of government coming. The Trump administration is picking cabinet ministers as we speak and trying to sort things out. Let's talk about what the new administration is going to mean for precious metals and silver in particular. And we'll talk about campaign rhetoric versus maybe reality where the rubber hits the road, because that may give us two completely different answers.
Exactly. Well, I think what happened on the election was a kind of a knee-jerk reaction. I think sentiment got very strong that, oh, good, our guy's in and that things are going to get better and dollar stronger and we don't have to worry so much about a safe haven status. And I think that's going to be a very short-lived idea because the math just doesn't work out. We still have the same structural problems we've always had, regardless of who's in office. So that means that I think we're going to see gold and silver consolidate here, and then it's going to move up, obviously, the dollar weaken. And that's going to be not super short term, but short term.
Yeah, I would agree. I looked at particularly the US dollar move, and I'm looking going, okay, does the markets not understand Trump's a mercantilist and wants a lower dollar? Like, you're kind of going contrary to what his wishes are going to be. And where does that hit the wall and bounce back to the reality of what a Trump administration is going to try and affect? And obviously, a lower dollar is good for precious metals.
Exactly. So I don't think, there's much more to say other than, the main idea that things are all going to get better probably will true for some of the conservatives. It probably will streamline government. But the structural problem is that 80% of the stuff can't be moved. The military budget, Medicare, Social Security, all the social services that are guaranteed really aren't going to go away. And so if you get rid of all the other, let's say, bloat in the administration or in the bureaucracy across the board, it's still not going to balance the budget. And that's the problem. And it will remain a problem. It'll be less of a problem. I mean, if you can't pay, 10 grand on your credit card to moving it down to 7.5, does that help? Well, maybe, but you still can't pay it.
Yeah. You just can't pay maybe a lesser amount.
Yeah.
But, you can't pay. Campaign rhetoric. We talk about him wanting a lower dollar. There's obviously a fight that's brewing between Trump and the Fed. If that fight were to break out openly in public, it's kind of rippled out a little bit at the last Fed meeting. But what's that likely to do with the U.S. dollar and with the precious metals if that fight becomes public?
That's a very interesting question. Off the top of my head, I really don't know. I don't think anyone does if they're serious with an answer. But it could get to be where the Fed becomes, a focal point for everybody because, still today, I mean, everyone on the internet, Mike, as you well know, probably knows that the Fed is a quasi-government organization. It's really a private corporation that was installed by Congress back in 1913 on Christmas. And that it's had the money power for the United States for a long time. And most people also know that the government doesn't really print the money, the Fed does. So, people say, well, we owe it to ourselves. No, the borrowing is done by the U.S. people, by their government. The U.S. people are on the hook to pay it back, and they pay it back to not themselves, but to a private banking cartel called the Federal Reserve. Now, some of that money does go from the Fed into the Treasury of the U.S., so it's gotten a little blurry as far as is it government or is it not? But still, primarily, it's not. It's private. So that's point number one. Point number two is if more and more people wake up to that, and there's kind of a wait a minute, shouldn't the Treasury be printing our money? Yeah, well, the Treasury does print our money, but it's borrowed into existence again through the Fed. So really, the question or the answer should be the Treasury prints and controls the money, and the Fed goes away. It's like the Ron Paul kill the Fed or end the Fed, and that could become a debate item if it gets enough, momentum or enough eyeballs on it. And so I'm reading into your question, but if that were to occur, we could really have what's happened in other times in this country where the presidential debate was all about the money situation. Nothing else really topped that subject. You go back to, the crime of 1873, and you got Williams Jennings Bryan, with the silver standard versus going to gold only. And, that was a whole political debate about that. And this would be similar in nature because of the political debate about who really should control our money. Should be a private corporation or should be our own government?
Yeah, and it's, that's very fair comment. And that's kind of where I was going with that question. I like the fact always that the Fed was created on Christmas Day, and it always made me appreciate the Christmas songs that I hated as a kid a lot better, because clearly the U.S. citizens got a much worse Christmas present that year than ever I did. So other campaign rhetoric is kind of surrounded the new Green Deal, new green economy. Trump has rattled sabers, said he wants to cut subsidies on electric cars, wants to cut subsidies on solar, wind power. These are all heavy silver industrial usage products, and they were funneling a lot of the growth into the silver market. Campaign rhetoric, or is he serious about that? You kind of wonder when Elon Musk is going to be part of the cabinet.
Yeah, we are getting mixed messages, Mike. It's hard to say. With Elon in there and what's really going to take place. I think at this point it's probably more rhetoric than reality, but it could be. I mean, really a true free market thinker doesn't subsidize anything. And yet, a tariff is kind of reverse subsidy, right?
Yeah.
So where are we going? I think a lot of it's for political power to establish, let's say, a different contract with, let's say, the Chinese. So threaten them with a big tariff. And then after it's all said and done, maybe there's a small tariff or there's a breakthrough where the trade is more free but more fair. So just because those words are out there doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going to happen.
So you think that ultimately there'll be a non-effect on the silver market because it was all talk and not and no action coming.
That's my stance right now. China's actually done internally in China enough solar to where they probably don't need to build much more for a while. But they also produce a lot of panels for everybody else basically. So what's solar demand outside of China going to look like? That's kind of the subset question. And then with the EV, I don't think I think they've peaked in popularity right now. So I think there could be, I know it sounds like I'm talking on both sides of my mouth, but I'm watching it carefully, so I really don't know. But I could see a slight decline in those two uses. But I think on aggregate, on the total, that it won't be that significant because you've got, what we're going to talk about in a moment, you've got Russia's stockpiling silver. Well, what's that all about?
Yeah.
And what does that mean for the future of silver?
Yeah, we'll get to that in a quick second. There's the other big announcement that happened in the electric vehicle market, and that I believe it was Samsung. It might have been Hyundai, but I think it was Samsung has created a model for a solid state battery which uses an awful lot of silver in it. Is that going to be a game changer to the electric market, or is it like fusion energy? We've heard it talked about for so long, and we're still nowhere near it.
It's interesting what you said there at the end, because this has been out before. This Samsung story. I mean, the guy that wrote the article that you're referring to does a pretty good job. None of us are perfect, but that story's been out there, and years ago, I forget, like 4, and now it's surfaced again. And I call the Silver Institute just to check my facts. And it's still basically in the experimental phase. As far as the amount of usage, the guy that wrote that article really bent it to much more favorable amount of usage than would actually take place. But it could have an effect. Oh, yeah, it could. And I've done the same thing. I made a mistake one time on the amount of RFID chips because they use nano amount of silver. And I got the decimal place off. Well, decimal place off was at the factor of 10.
Yeah.
So, I had to take the egg off my face and make a public apology. So, but will it have an effect? Yes, but it's much further off, I think, than what that article alluded to.
Okay, so it's going to be like the flying cars and fusion energy. They've been promising that since I was a little boy, and they'll probably, be promising that while I'm, tap dancing on my own grave, like down the road. So it's okay. That's a fair answer. Let's turn to Russia. We talked a little bit about China and its industrial use. Russia is going to join all the retail silver market and be a silver stacker. They want to create a silver reserve. Everybody has talked very heavily about it as treating it the same as gold, and it's a precious metals reserve. Is it though? Are they doing this for industrial consumption, or are they doing it for monetary reasons?
Well, my hotline to Putin broke about a year ago, so I really don't know. But I think the safe answer and the most accurate answer is both. I think that the primary reason they're stacking silver as a strategic resource is for industrial purposes. All the things we've talked about over the years, and it's a metal of war. It's needed in a war machine. So I think that'd be the reason number one. Reason number two is a monetary asset reserve, something you can borrow against or use in final payment. But I think primarily it's mostly for industrial reasons.
Okay, so the people that have gotten a little ahead of the skis, thinking it's all precious metals, then.
I think I've done a study on this. I've talked about it a few times, but in order for silver to have any meaning in the monetary sphere, we would have to get back in a ratio to gold to what I call the classical monetary ratio was 15-1. And now the amount of silver for investment purposes is about equal to the amount of gold for investment purposes. So really, if you think it through, it'd probably have to be more like 7-1 or 8-1 where it comes out of the ground. So silver at, say, 10% of the gold price, that price would be sufficient for it to be a monetary asset. But anything above that, it's pretty meaningless. Look at it another way. All the gold in the world right now, from a financial perspective, is 1% of the whole financial market. Silver is 0.02% of the financial markets. So if you think 2.02% is going to have any meaning as money, I got a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn. I mean, so multiply it by 10, and now it's 0.2%. Multiply it by 100, and now you're talking something. But those are the kind of monetization would mean those kind of factors. You'd have to go up by 50 times or something. So this is something that's surprising. Not more people have talked about that. I'm not saying I'm the only one, but I'm the only one I know of that says, look, this can't be money. Another way to look at it, I looked at it and gave a quick overview on this. Right now, the average person in America makes about $25 an hour, and there's 150,000 workers in America, and there's an 8-hour day. Well, at the time, silver was about $25 an ounce. So that would be 8 ounces for a day's work for the average American times 140 million. Do the math, we're out of silver in one day. So how does it become money if you pay everybody in silver wages at current prices? You're out of the whole stockpile in one day's wages. Doesn't work. So it's good for it to be money. It's got to work for 100 days and then, circle through the system and come back and be spent.
Yeah, but it'd be very simple for them. They would just apothecate the silver down, put more lead into it, and instead of being, kind of quietly creating inflation and eating up our buying power, they would be doing it blatantly and in our face.
Something like that. I like that one.
Let's bring up the crystal ball for the last question. Let's take a look at the next year or two under the new Trump administration. What kind of surprises do you think we might see? What effects that might have? And are there any black swans that we should be concerned about?
Well, in my speech on the new monetary system, I'm very concerned about the digital ID, because the digital ID is the precursor to the central bank digital currency on a global basis. And I think the administration is affirming digital ID. They're selling it in a different way. It's for the immigration coming across the border. We got to know who these people are. We got to know who's an American and who isn't. We need some type of identification system that verifies everyone. So that would be a step in that direction. And then, of course, once that's implemented, then moving the next step up into a central bank digital currency is pretty easy, because now you've got everybody identified. And so I'm watching that carefully. That's how I see it right now. I call them as I see them, and it does concern me. I think the sideshow is all this other stuff that's important. I mean, I would like to see, the government downsized, and I think you're going to see a lot of efficiencies using AI. I think you're going to see a lot of the bureaucratic type of situations. I gave an example on the DMV, we call it in the U.S., Department of Motor Vehicles, and you got to stay in a line like 3 hours, and it's just a real pain. And then they finally get up there and you present your identification, and they take a new picture of you, and they give you a new driver's license. They'll be doing that with AI. You'll be walking into a kiosk, you'll give them a retina scan, they'll say, "Hello, Michael Fox, good to see you again. Your record of the last 4 years was you had no accidents and 1 ticket. Therefore, you're good for 4 more years instead of 6. Drive it a little better next time, Michael. Here's your new ID, your new license," and they'll be popped out in about 3 minutes. So, boy, that was pretty cool. I didn't have to interface and stand in line and wait and all that stuff. And they'll do that in a lot of areas that you require all this paperwork and all this stuff. I'll just say, "Hey, it's you. I know it's you. Here's your passport. Here's your driver's license. Here's your form for, medical insurance. Here's your government aid. Here's your welfare check. Here's your on and on. So a lot of that will be streamlined beyond belief. I mean, it's kind of hard to imagine where that's going to go. And I think especially the servers will be jumping up and down with joy about, wow, this is really good, saving us money, more efficient, doesn't waste my time, and all those things are valid. But when you get down to the nitty gritty, what does that underlie? And if it underlies more control of your life through the monetary power, you've given up a lot.
Yeah. I was laughing when you were talking about the driver's license. My car does all that stuff except giving me the license. So it was, we're kind of halfway there already in a lot of ways. If people want to continue to follow your musings, join your newsletter, how would they do so, David?
Go to themorganreport.com. We got a free service, so we get on the normal Morgan Report. And then if you want to be a member, that's a paid service. It's on the subscription bar at the top of the website.
Wonderful. I've been absolute a pleasure to see you again. And I look forward to us having more chats as the silver market rolls forward.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for your time, David. The Prospector News Podcast is for educational purposes only. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and are not to be taken as investment advice. Listeners need to do their own due diligence and seek advice of a licensed investment advisor.